Well, welcome to podcast number 3 of Life of Leadership in Lorain County. My guest today is Sandy Maddock. Sandy, how are you?
Hey, I'm good. How are you, Bob?
I am good too. Thanks a lot for joining me.
I'm happy to be here.
Before we get started, I want to just give a quick shout out to my sponsors for today. First of all, BCT Alarms is a local security company. Brian Jankowski, I've known Brian Jankowski for several years. He's a good friend. He's got these cool security items that you can hook up to your phone. You can run the entire security of your house from your phone. I mean, you don't even have to use a keypad anymore. Your phone will unlock your door for you. It's so cool. Give Brian a shout, 877-215-0763. I also want to also thank WOBL, WDLW, WOBL AM 1320 and 107.7 FM Gold Country, and WDLW AM 1380 and 98.9 FM Rock and Roll Oldies on the Cool Cat. Good friend of mine, Gary and Renee Tillett, are the owners. So here we are today with Sandy Maddock. She's got a beautiful background. You can see the snow behind her. And so how are you today, Sandy?
I'm great. Actually, so happy to be here. Like I said, thanks for including me in this. I think this is such a great thing that you're doing here to, raise up kind of Lorain County in this Life of Leadership podcast series. So I appreciate you inviting me.
Thanks a lot. I am so excited to have you because although I've known you for a few years, there's a lot about imarc that I had no idea about. I did some research on my own ahead of time, so what the first thing I want to do is to ask you about your background before you started imarc.
Oh, yeah, sure. So I'm a nurse by training. Right from college, I went into critical care nursing and spent a few years, with critical care patients. And then travel nurse, a lot of you have heard about travel nursing, kind of went all over the country, different hospitals, working with critical care units for a year or so, a couple years, and then literally came back home and went back to my original job, and there was no end in sight for me on night shift. So I responded to this random ad in the paper for a research nurse, had no idea even what research nurses do. But I knew it was Monday through Friday and I would be able to sleep at night. So got that job and it opened a whole new world for me. So when I was doing that job, I would intersect with people from the industry. So the research nurse role, my job was to recruit patients into studies of new drugs or new devices. So maybe we were looking at a cholesterol medication, or maybe we were putting in a new stent, or maybe we were putting a stent somewhere else in your body, like your leg. And I would recruit patients who qualified to get these drugs or these devices. And then I would follow them for sometimes 2 years, 3 years, 4 years to see how they did. And to report all of that information kind of in a package to the company, who would then report it to the FDA. So I had a lot of interface with the companies that were developing these drugs or developing these devices. And they would come into the hospital, they would check on my work, they would teach me if there were things that I wasn't doing right, or they would work with the doctors on technique and that kind of stuff. And I developed some really strong relationships with what we called industry. So from there, I started to see people that would come in who really didn't know what they were doing. So here I was enrolling patients, human beings, into these research studies. And the people coming from industry, not all of them, some of them were fantastic, but some of them were really, really bad. They didn't know what they were doing. They didn't understand their own device. They didn't understand their drugs. They didn't understand what they were reading in a medical chart. And I decided, gosh, I think that the industry needs to raise the bar. I think that we need to put something out there that is better than this, because human beings are on the other side of these drugs and on the other side of these devices. And so we can't settle for less, I guess. So that's when I started imarc. I at first started just as me, one person going out there and doing what those industry people did when I was a research nurse. So I went from Monday through Friday, reporting 10 minutes away from my home to work, to Monday through Friday, maybe being in 4 different cities during the week, so it was a huge change. And before I knew it, probably 1 to 2 years in, I couldn't keep up with the work. And I felt like, okay, here I'll recommend a friend who could do the same thing I'm doing. I did that, and it didn't work out so well because I had no control over the quality of that person. And here I was recommending that person, and maybe they weren't delivering the kind of quality that I wanted, the reason that I even went out on a limb in the first place. So that's when I decided, okay, the next time I get to the point where I can't handle this, I'm going to bring an employee on, and we're going to do this right. And so that's basically the path. And here we are 22 years later, actually just sold the company to a global medical device, pure play medical device company who saw the value in what we created here in this area. So that's kind of how I got to imarc. That was probably longer than you expected, Bob, or wanted. Sorry about that.
No, what I've learned is get a little bit of back. Okay, what I've learned is the most interesting thing is the other person's story. So you gave us a story, right? And we're connecting with you through that story. I think it's kind of interesting, right? You started out as a nurse. You didn't like the hours that you kept, right? So you saw a random ad, right? So just out of the blue, you saw a random ad. You're like, I want to change my life. So here's the interesting thing. There is a lot of us want to change our lives, but we're not willing to, as you say, go out on a limb, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you took that opportunity, as scary as it was, to go out on a limb, but you were kind of pushed in that direction because you didn't like to work nights, right?
Mm-hmm.
So all of a sudden you became a research nurse, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then you got to the point where you're working with these individuals, and you're saying, wait a minute, we can do better than this, right?
Yeah.
We're not where we want to be. Then you decided to start a company, and you're traveling 5 days a week.
Yeah, right. Well, and I'm telling you, the best way to grow yourself is to make yourself uncomfortable. I mean, the more uncomfortable you can make yourself, you think you can talk yourself out of anything. I'm not enough. I'm not good enough. I don't have the right experience. Okay, well, try it anyways, and you'll definitely come out on the other side a different person and a stronger person for having gone through it. Even if you fail, you're going to come out different if you try it. So, and that happened. I can tell you, it happened a lot. I go into business. So now here I am. I hired my first person. Oh my goodness. Okay, how do I do payroll? How do I do my tax? How do I take out their taxes? Oh my goodness, how do I even do this? Do I need a handbook? Do I need timesheets? Like, what do I do? And it was literally like the logistically little things that can bog your mind down, but also the big things like, oh wow, I'm responsible now to keep this person busy. I'm responsible to sell enough of our work, to recruit enough work in, keep 2 people busy now. That was such a stress for me when we had 2 people. It became like a no-brainer when we had 60. It was like, oh, we got this. We have a process. But I remember how stressful it was when there were just 2 of us. With one of us, with just me, I thought, okay, worst case scenario, I go back to doing a job that I loved. Worst case scenario. Or I would find another job that I've loved. I've been one of those people who literally from my first job working at an ice cream stand, I've loved every single job I've had, every job in college. I've loved every job I've had. So what was the risk to me? I would find another job I would love. And so for me, it was worth being uncomfortable. It was worth taking the risk. It was worth jumping. But everyone has to obviously make that decision. But I'm telling you what, make yourself uncomfortable. Even if it's in a job, maybe you don't start your own business, but maybe you apply for that manager role that you just don't think, well, I haven't been here as long as so-and-so. So, I don't deserve it yet. No, apply for it. Apply for it on your second day. Make yourself uncomfortable if it's something that you think you want.
Yeah, I love the whole idea of making yourself uncomfortable. So I'm going to ask you a question that might
Mhm.
make you uncomfortable. I was
Yeah.
reading in Cranes, and one of the paragraphs in Cranes said that you spent 4 hours, I think it was, on the phone in tears trying to figure out a tax situation, right? You talk about uncomfortable. Talk about that.
Okay. That is funny. I forgot about that article, but that was the day I hired my husband to be my back office person, because it was at a time when so probably some of the early mistakes I made were not having the right accountant, not having the right lawyer, not surrounding myself with the right people in the beginning to help a brand new business person who never took a business class in her life. So I think that they were probably very competent people, but didn't maybe know how to work with somebody who was literally coming from zero. And so I anyways, had I had a better situation, I wouldn't have been myself on my phone in my kitchen. But yeah, I'm sitting there, and it was a system, like an automatic system. You're on the phone, and you're putting in all the numbers from your tax form into the phone. And every time I put them all in, and it would make you go through the entire form. And then it wouldn't tell you until the end that something in your numbers was wrong, but it wouldn't tell you what it was. And I did this over, and the deadline was midnight. Here, I've been doing it since all day, and then I get to where it's like 11 o'clock, and I'm like, I can't do it anymore. I can't do it anymore. And I did. I ended up in tears. And that's when I'm like, I can't run the clinical part of the company and handle all this back office stuff. And that's when I realized, like, I've got limits. And that's when my husband actually joined the company and took over the whole back office for a while. So it was hard. That part was hard. Take a business class, everybody.
So you talk about surrounding yourself with good people,
Yep.
and I remember in our past, you and I have had a conversation. You may or may not remember it, but when you started it was imarc an LLC, or is it
Yeah.
sub S?
Yep.
Okay, so when you started imarc, you went out, you hired an attorney, right? You found an attorney to help walk you through that. You said you hired an accountant. You also hired a great marketing organization as well. So you surrounded yourself with good people. Did you hire any other outside sources to help you?
Through the years, it's depended. So, I mean, I've had people that I've hired for specific issues that have come up, or maybe we had a client that had something that we didn't have experience with. So I would hire I had a network kind of developed where I could kind of tap on this person or tap on this person. In the recent past, when we were planning to sell the company, we hired an advisory group who literally helped us through every step of the way. So at various times through our lifespan, we absolutely brought experts in when we needed to. I brought some team builders in at a time where we had, doubled in size, and we needed maybe um, that extra help to solidify that growth and to keep the culture very strong. So there were various things that we've done over the years: HR help, or bookkeeping, or accounting. Yeah, for sure. It's important to know what you can't do, or what you're not strong in, and find people to fill those gaps, for sure.
There's a book out there. It's called Traction, and the book Traction itself is about growing a business. And just like you said right here, it is so important for you to identify what you do well and what you don't do well, and find somebody else to surround yourself with. Otherwise, you're not going to get any sleep. You're probably not going to be as successful as you can be. And we get to that point where we don't want to give up any authority, and then we kind of enclose ourselves into a little cocoon, and we're not going to grow, right?
Oh, yeah. I'll tell you, one of the things that I am the worst at is interviewing people. So, like, interviewing people for a job. And the reason is that I have such empathy for them. I try and answer questions for them. If I see them struggling, I jump in and I save them. And so very, very quickly, as we started growing, there was more than one person who said, maybe you shouldn't be in on these interviews. And I took that feedback very, very seriously. And I stopped being in on interviews because we had people that did it so much better than I did. I mean, that's just one example of, but one example that impacted our company greatly. You know, there were people in the company who were so skilled at kind of weeding out the crazy and bringing in the right people, you know, for the roles that we had. And I wasn't afraid to say, you guys are way better at this than me. And you cannot own it all. You can't be the best at everything, you know, and it's important to acknowledge that you don't have to do it all.
But you do have to hire people that you trust, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think that was the key, is that I trusted them they knew what kind of person we needed. You know, we never hired from resumes. So, I mean, we had CVs in front of us and they had to have some relevant experience. But if you came in with all the right background and you weren't a kind individual, or you weren't going to fit with our culture, you didn't get past the first interview. I mean, we knew what we needed to keep a strong company culture. And I trusted them to find those people more than they trusted me to find those people.
You know, a guy that I used to work for used to say, stick to your knitting, right? Stick to your knitting.
Yes.
Do what you do best. And that sounds like that's what you did. And
Yes,
that's
100%.
one thing that helped you get as successful as you were, right?
Yeah, for sure. I couldn't have done it without the people that were working right beside me for 15, some of them 15 years of the 22-year history.
So now you answered some of these. You answered this question a little bit with what you said, but see if we can get a little bit more specific. The question is, what life lessons did you learn from creating a business from startup? Life lessons that you learned from creating a business from startup.
Oh, wow. What life lessons? I think it's a lot of work, you know, and I think that anything that's going to be, you know, successful in the end is going to take some sacrifice. And that could go for your marriage, that can go for your relationship with your kids, your relationships with others. But for sure, when you're starting a business, you just have to understand it takes a lot. It takes a lot of you, for sure. And then, of course, it takes a support network around you. But there are sometimes when people will come up to me and they know I've started a business and they know I went at it kind of a weird way, going from nursing with no business background into just starting a business and starting it to do something I never did. So I never was that role. It wasn't like I worked for another company, learned the role, and then came over. So it was a very strange kind of path. But people say, well, I want to start a business. And then I ask them what their passion is or what they want to improve or I don't know. I just want to start a business, you know? And then when I tell them what they're looking for, more often than not, they'll say, well, I want to have my own schedule. I want it to be flexible. I want to be my own boss. I want to, you know, be home on the weekends. And none of that makes sense in my head because when you start your own business, it's actually not about you. it's about more than you. And if you make it about you, your business, maybe you'll get it off the ground, but whether or not it'll be successful would remain to be seen in my eyes, you know, because it has to involve sacrifice and time. And you're going to have to miss something. I can't tell you how many of my kids' school things I missed in the early years because I was in another country or in another state but I knew I had to do that, you know, and that was a choice that I made in order to get to this point. So anyways, I guess that would be one life lesson, and that you can't do it alone. You can't do life alone, for sure. And you can't start a business alone. Like we said, you've got to have really awesome people around you. So, yep. Is that good?
Yeah, I think it's brilliant. I love it. I think the whole idea of sacrifice. You talk about being uncomfortable, right? Are you willing to sacrifice some things for the good of others, right?
Mhm.
Because you said it can't be about you, right? So I like this whole idea of higher purpose,
Yeah.
and it sounds like this starting this business, with that first thought you had, well, it should be better than this, right?
Yeah.
Research should be better than this. You set a vision, and that vision was bigger than you. So you surrounded yourself with people that were bigger than you, that did
Mhm.
what you could not do, for the benefit of you, your family, your employees, and those people that count on you to do
Yes.
research.
Yes, and one of the questions I used to get all the time was, "Don't you miss taking care of patients?" And I have to tell you, it was a transition to go from being at bedside to being in an office. And the way I saw it though is I now had patients who I didn't even know about, who 10 years from now are going to benefit from the research we're doing today. So I looked at it as, but my impact on patients has actually grown. So I don't have that bedside face-to-face kind of interaction with patients, but I do have an impact. And because there was so much of a need for a high quality company like ours to come in and do this work, the people that worked with me felt this purpose too. And I think it's so important as a leader to continually remind people why we're here. We're not here to collect a paycheck. If you're here to collect a paycheck, you're in the wrong spot. We're here because on the other side of that device, that aneurysm graft or that brain matter replace or duramatter replacement graft or anything that we've done all over the body, there's a patient and there's future patients. And if we don't do our job well, this thing could get approved when it shouldn't, or it could get not approved when it should. So we had such a critical role in the success or failure of these products, and very it was a very important role in for future medical treatments for patients, basically. So that is a higher purpose, and I think it's important to, as a leader, to kind of keep that in the forefront.
So you gave us a little bit of information about the type of research that you did, your company did. So talk about that a little bit. So you guys did research on medical devices. Is that
Yeah, so if
right?
a company has a new medical device, and that was our specialty, was medical devices. If they have a new medical device, for example, a hip or a knee or like I said, an aneurysm graft to keep people's aneurysms from bursting, coils that you put in the vessels in their head to keep them from having another stroke. Or there's so many devices and women's health devices. There's so many that we worked on over the course of 22 years. If they had a new device, they would come to us and say, okay, here's our device. We need you to go educate the hospitals on how this clinical trial is going to play out, what types of patients we want, how to go about consenting those patients, what the regulations are surrounding this activity. And then we go and we train the physicians, we train the nurses, and then we check up on them. Maybe depending on the type of study and the rate of enrollment of patients into the studies, maybe we'll check up on them once every 2 or 3 months. Maybe we'll check up on them once every 6 months. So it just depends on the study and how we design it how we design it based on our expected rate of enrollment, the complexity of the device, the complexity of the patient population, that kind of a thing. So then we go to the hospitals, we review all their records, we make sure everything that they say is happening is actually what's happening. And then we report that information to the company, who in turn reports it to the FDA. So when you hear that the FDA process takes so long, there's so much going on in that time. It's not like a company develops a device and they, sit there and wait for FDA to approve it. No, we're enrolling hundreds of patients in clinical trials all over the world. We're compiling data that's coming from Japan or from Germany or from the US. And in the US, maybe it's at 20 different hospitals in the US. So we're traveling to all those different places. We're doing all of this work, bringing it all together, creating a report, and then saying, okay, here's how your device did. So that's our role in that clinical research kind of realm. That makes sense.
It does, and it sounds like you've helped or will be helping several thousands, if not hundreds of thousands, maybe even millions of people,
right,
with the research that you did.
Yeah, we've worked with a lot of amazing companies over the years, and some of the devices that were approved like back in 1999 or 2000 when we just started, they're still in use today. So yeah, the impact is huge. And it just feels great to be part of something bigger, to your point. They have a higher purpose, higher than just going to work and punching a, time card.
So a girl growing up from Avon, Ohio, did you ever think that this was going to be your destiny?
No, and I'm telling you, especially for women out there, being in and being in nursing. So there's two things that are at play here. First, as a woman, you think, I don't, those same things I said before about I'm not enough, I can't do this. Women aren't usually CEOs. What am, I'm supposed to be a nurse or a teacher or whatever. I know that's changing, which I'm really happy about. But then as a nurse, you're thinking, I can work in a hospital or a doctor's office. Like there's this kind of conception or this perception rather, that I'm limited. But you're not limited ever. Whether you're an engineer, a nurse, a doctor, maybe as a doctor, you don't even have to take care of patients in an office or in a hospital. You could actually do this too. You could do so much beyond what you're yourself limiting yourself to. Get out of your way, I guess, and take a chance, because you could do some amazing things. And I'll tell you, that was probably the best thing about answering that random ad, is when I said earlier, Bob, that the world opened up to me. It was a world I had no idea existed. Like you probably hearing about this right now, probably didn't know a company in your backyard even did something like this. Like it's worth kind of exploring, and then not saying, oh, that's what they do, but saying, could I do that? I bet I could, and I bet you I could do it better. So I don't know. Don't limit yourself.
And that's a great point. And why do you think people limit themselves or think they can't achieve?
I think because comfortable is better. Comfortable is safer, right? You can't imagine making yourself uncomfortable. You can't imagine leaving your kids overnight. You can't imagine. You're so concerned with you that you can't see yourself outside of your own needs or your own wants or your own. And I think that's where people get comfortable, and maybe they end up hating their jobs. I don't know. I don't know how that works. But I can tell you, for those of you out here saying who are thinking, okay, I got you. I can do all of it except for travel and be away from my kids, or travel and be away from my family, or whatever. I would say I am a better mom because I was away. Now, that's me. That doesn't mean that that's everybody. But being away made me so present when I was home. And so I'm not saying I'm a better mom than you. I'm saying I was a better mom for sure, for me, because of the work I did, the purpose I felt, the energy, the intellectual stimulation, all those things helped me come home and be a better mom. So don't dismiss it. Like, think about this. Is it more about you, or is it more about this higher purpose?
So how would you define success?
How would I define success? Well, I mean, like, simply, I guess, accomplishing something in the way that you wanted to accomplish it. In terms of, like, at a project level, we would have deadlines, or we would have benchmarks that we had to hit. And it was always it was always great to see that we hit them, 99.9% of the time. But success also, I think, is maybe bigger than all those little successes. Being part of this higher purpose, feeling content or feeling happy in your job. I don't know. It's hard to say, Bob. That one's so abstract to me. I feel like it's the culmination of so many different things. But I can tell you that I feel the most successful when I see somebody else achieve something that they wanted to achieve. Like maybe I sat back and you and I have talked about how I'm a little bit of a OCD, a little perfectionist, and it's hard when somebody's doing something and you think I could just help them. I could just do this. And you force yourself, because you got to remember it's not about me doing it. Like if I did it, I've done it for 20 years. If they do it, that's success. And so holding yourself back and allowing somebody else to do it, even if they make mistakes, is also part of leadership, and part of being successful. So, and I've had a couple, I would say, big successes in the people that worked around me that I'll take with me forever.
Yeah, you bring up a great point. Empowering others.
Oh, yeah.
Empowering others. What would you say to a leader that wants to keep control of everything because they're not comfortable empowering others? What would you say to them?
Oh my gosh, I would say learn from my mistakes, because when, like, for instance, you mentioned that I eventually brought in a business development arm of the company, and I hired a marketing firm, and I had my own ideas when I started the company about the creative side of it, what I wanted the website to look like and what I wanted my logo to be like. And I took, I actually thought of the company as my third child. It was actually my first child, actually. I didn't have my two kids till after the company started, but I was very attached to it, right? And so they come in and they start to tell me what's wrong with everything, and this isn't medical in color, and this color has tested better in these environments. I'm like, well, it's my color. I'm not changing my color, and I'm so set in my ways on stupid color, right? And then I realized, like, when I was just telling this story the other day, when I was in kindergarten, I have this very, very clear memory. When it came to art class, the only way I could get through art class was to look at what the person next to me was doing and just do what they were doing, because I had no creativity that way, like art-wise. And other people, when they think about cheating in school, they think about cheating on like a math test. No, I cheated in art. So like, I think that I had to recognize that I'm not the creative and let them do their thing. And as soon as I let go and empowered them to make decisions and trusted them, the whole sales and marketing department just exploded. Like it was so awesome. As soon as I got out of the way, I guess, things started to move. And not just because they picked the color that they wanted, but because the whole thing had this harmony and this consistency of messaging and this branding that I didn't even care about, and so that's just an example. But again, if you can unleash people to be creative, not only are they going to feel valued at work, they're going to like coming to work, and they're probably going to come up with better stuff than you ever could have. So I think I would tell leaders, or I would tell people who are struggling with a leader who's holding on, keep pushing yourselves to let go, keep pushing yourself. If you're an employee, keep pushing up, because that's what they had to do to me. They had to lead up, and leading up is a skill that I needed at that time and that moment for that particular purpose. I needed them to lead me. So.
Yeah, that's a great explanation of leading up. Absolutely. So what I want to do is I want to incorporate a couple of things that you said in a couple of thoughts that you had. You were at the beginning, you talked about failure, right? When you empower others, failure is going to happen. It seems like in our day and age, people are afraid to fail. So can you speak to that? And then how do we help ourselves feel comfortable about failure? Because we see other people looking at us when we fail, and we feel a little bit less of an individual. So talk about that. Yeah.
Well, yeah, and this, from a leadership perspective, you've got to walk the talk. And I think be as authentic as you can. Nobody's going to believe you if you tell them that you've never failed. And if you're open about your failures, especially with your staff, they're going to feel a little bit more comfortable to be open with theirs. You know, I think that there's always been this feeling of I've got to do a great job all the time, 100% of the time, or I'm going to get in trouble. And I think fostering an environment of continuous improvement, it forces that kind of ownership of the failures, especially when, and I'll tell you this, and I'm just kind of thinking back to how we came to be in this. We had what was called a CAPA system, continuous action, preventative action, or something like that. Anyways, continuous and preventative action. So if we did something that resulted in a mistake, maybe, and you got to remember back to the whole it's not about you thing, maybe it wasn't about you. Maybe our processes weren't good enough to prevent that from happening. Maybe you did everything that you could and were supposed to do, but we still failed. So in order to help other people, you have to be upfront about the mistake you made or the problem you had, so that we can figure out if somewhere along the line we have to change something so that somebody else doesn't make that mistake. So owning and being upfront about failures became part of our culture. We would have them submit these reports of, hey, I missed a deadline, or I did this, or I did that, or I sent a report to the wrong company, or I did whatever it was. It could be anything. And then we would figure out, okay, was that just a one-off, or was that an issue with the process? So failure is good, and I think that failure continues to make your company stronger. I also think putting people in really challenging situations, and I don't know if this kind of goes along with this, Bob, but it's going to cause potentially some errors. When you've got a really complex project, maybe you've got multiple countries involved, you've got a really, really specific high-risk device in a very tiny high-risk patient population. Maybe there's just so much going on. It's whatever. It's a brand new company, a new project manager. Who knows what it is? But there's going to be mistakes, and there's going to be some feelings of failure, or some, I shouldn't have been put on this project. I'm not enough. I'm not whatever. But the truth is, once you get through that, like I said before, you're going to emerge stronger. And at our company, we kind of had this mantra, like I get to, like instead of, oh, I have to do this horrible thing. No, I get to do this horrible thing because we knew that coming out of that, you were going to be poised to be even better at the next project because of all the hard stuff that you had to go through. When I was a travel nurse, we would get 12-hour orientation. 12 hours, that's it. So you've never been to this city, let alone this hospital. You don't even know where the soap is, let alone like the crash cart. And you got 12 hours to learn everything. And I would always say, give me the hardest patient, give me the train wreck of a patient, because if I had the hardest thing to do and I was with somebody during that, then I was going to learn everything from where the soap is to where the crash cart is. I knew that in a 12-hour shift, I would learn it all, as much as I can possibly learn. So there's something to be said about taking the hard thing. And again, I'll just go back to being uncomfortable. There's just something to be said for stretching yourself to that hard thing, even if you're going to fail. So that would be my message about failing. And seriously, leaders out there, like, it's okay if you failed too. It's actually better if you failed, because like I said, nobody's going to believe that you didn't. And this is how you build trust, and how other people are going to feel comfortable also trusting you when they fail.
So before we started recording, we were talking about commitment to excellence, and you
Yeah.
said that was a very important part of your company, was you wanted everybody committed to excellence. So how do you weigh, what are the scales look like when you talk about, I'm committed to excellence but I failed, I'm committed to excellence but I failed? That doesn't seem to go hand in hand. So how do you respond to that?
Oh yeah, 100% goes hand in hand. You can be committed to excellence. You don't set out to fail, right? You don't set out on a project and say, oh, I really want to fail today. But you're committed to excellence. When you see something that failed, because of your commitment, you're going to change course. You're going to redo a process. You're going to, whatever it is, to make sure that that end result is of excellence. And that's so important to me because it's the basis of why I started the company. You had these people coming in when I was a research nurse and they had no commitment to excellence. In fact, they were punching a card, they were punching a time card because they couldn't have really felt a higher purpose to come in and do kind of shoddy work. They couldn't have. They couldn't have. And so for us, it's never been compromised. Our commitment was to excellence at all times. And failure does not mean that you're not committed to excellence. It actually, how you react to it it demonstrates your commitment. So, yeah.
Yeah, I kind of look at that, right? You run a research company, failure is going to happen, right? But you have to you have to test it out to see what's going to work, right? Back when you were in 5th grade and you did your science project, you had a hypothesis, but if it didn't work out, that doesn't mean you scrap your entire project.
And I would say, even to take it to maybe some folks that are thinking about starting your own business, maybe you start with a very narrow focus and then you want to venture off this way or this way. You might not know everything there is to know about how this particular new venture you want to add or bring into your company is going to be. It might be horrible. And maybe as part of failure, the failure of that, you say, oh, well, it's failing because we didn't do A, B, or C. Let's do those things. Or maybe you say, I guess I was wrong about that. I actually don't think that's a good arm to add to our company. And you stop it. And you stop it before it drains you dry, and that's okay too. You went out, you tried something, and you stopped it before it dragged the entire company down, or you altered how you did it so that it did work. And I don't know if that's vague for a lot of you out there, but I think it's important to assess, okay, we're going to go do this thing, and then we're going to see how we did, and then we're going to see if we should keep doing it, or if we should change how we do it, or if we shouldn't do it at all. And those things are all okay outcomes, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. Now, core values, right? Do you have a list of core values for yourself personally? Did you have a list of core values for imarc? What are your thoughts on core values?
Yeah, I think we've hit on actually probably all of them because, like I said, starting imarc, and even for myself, I've always been committed to just giving it 100% and striving for excellence. Way back to maybe not that kindergarten art project, but back pretty far. So commitment to excellence is huge. And then part of that being continuous improvement, which again, as you pointed out, has to do with failing and then figuring out why you failed and then making it better. And then I think also with this particular job, with this particular line of work, understanding the higher purpose, and actually it's for any line of work, understanding that there's a higher purpose, that it's not about you, has been a thread through my entire career. It's not about me. Today it's about, I can tell you, Bob, I hate meetings. I absolutely hate meetings. I'm one of those people. Like, if you can do it with an email, I want to do it with an email. And so we would get a new client. Let's just say we get a new potential client. And we'd have somebody who said, okay, let's meet and talk about this new potential client at 10 o'clock. And I think, what do we have to talk about? Like, we all kind of know what the project is. We're going to get to work on it. Well, I realized it's not about me. Just because I hate meetings doesn't mean that I shouldn't go to a meeting, because that person needs a meeting and they need all of us to be on the same page. And this is the best way for that particular person to do it. And so today, at this particular time, I need to be in a meeting, whether or not I want to be in that meeting or not. As a leader, I have to understand what is needed today for this particular person and adapt my style accordingly. I mean, it's not to say that there aren't times when I say, no, we don't need a meeting, let's just go. But there's some times where you have to consider others before you consider yourself, just because I don't want to sit there for 15 minutes. That's not a good enough reason to avoid a meeting. So anyways, those are some of my core values, I think. I look at it like, I don't know, a little bit like servant leadership, I guess, thinking about leadership styles and how people normally lead. I think I've learned over the years, I can spot a really bad leader and I can spot a really good leader. And I've also learned that all of us have both in us. We have days where we're probably that bad leader and everything's got to be our way. And you know what, I'm sick of this and let's just whatever. And we have days when we're that inspirational leader and maybe even within the context of your environment, you're a better leader to some than you are to others. But I think one of the things I've learned over time, and I'm telling you, I don't know if there's a name for this, Bob, but it's truly when I've said this 100 times, this is going to be like probably what you title this podcast. It's not about you, but when it's about the people you work for or the clients you're working with, you're going to have more success than if you make it about your own needs. And my kind of point in that, and I'm sorry I'm being kind of choppy explaining it, but if I have somebody named Sarah who today is working on a project that she's very comfortable with, all I need to do is give her the space, set her free, and she's going to do an amazing job. If tomorrow I give her something she's a little more uncomfortable with, maybe she's going to need a little bit more support and micromanagement. It's not to say that I'm a micromanaging leader, but I'm understanding that today, this is what I need to do to get her where she can thrive. So I don't know. I don't think that I have one leadership style, per se. I think that I don't know. Maybe I'm a flexible leader or something. I don't know. Anyways, it all stems from core values, which I know is what you asked me about, and I went way too far in the weeds on that.
You didn't go in the weeds at all because the next question was going to be what's your leadership style, and I think that you segued into that perfectly. So now here's another question for you. It's based on process, right? So I know that if I wanted to go out and I wanted to start a McDonald's, I pay a lot of money for a franchise fee. What they give me is a binder. And in that binder are the processes. And they say, if you follow this process, you're going to be a successful McDonald's. Then I take a look at some small businesses that grow up and maybe they don't have processes. But then I see businesses that don't have processes that create processes, and all of a sudden they're a thriving business. Now because you are self-proclaimed OCD, right? You're a perfectionist, yep. Right? Even take it further than that. And the fact that you're doing research, process is so important. Now, talk to me a little bit about the process or the process of putting in processes, holding people accountable to processes, and how important process is to the success of a company.
Oh yeah. This could be an entire 8-hour show. So we have what's called a quality system, and it is a system that we created to develop processes that would govern every type of activity that we do, but not to the minutia of how exactly we do it, because every project is going to have its own specific needs, and every person might have a little bit different way of getting to the same point a little bit different way. So it accommodates, there's some flexibility built into the processes to allow for OCD people as well as, type B people or whatever. So it's called a quality system. It starts with our quality policy, and then emanating from that is all the procedures that govern all of the different services that we offer. So we also then had a quality manager who oversaw the quality system. And what they would do is, and you know how I told you that we would encourage people to talk about their failures? Well, we had a specific form that if something went wrong, if they followed this process, but they goofed up somewhere along the line, they would submit a form to the quality manager. The quality manager would review it and say, okay, this was because we have an error in our process. Let's fix that. Or it's because, oh, that person just made a mistake. And so we would record all of that. The quality manager would record all of that. She would she would gather the information into a quarterly report and present it to the execs of our company and tell us, these are the areas that we're continually having issues with, and here are the issues that we're doing really well at. So then we would decide, okay, well, you know what? Since we continue to have the same issues, we're going to implement a training program so that the whole company now knows how we do this or that or that. So we could take action based on the data that we were seeing about where we're failing with the quality system. Before you have a quality system, you have nothing in terms of consistency, quality. You have no idea what's going out your door, what type of quality of work is getting presented to these clients, and they're paying a lot of money for you to do this work for them. So we wanted to make sure, back to the whole, commitment to excellence thing, that we were giving them an excellent product. So that's how we did it. So we developed a system. We hired somebody to kind of manage the system. We made people accountable for reporting when they veered off the system, and then we took action when it made sense to take action based on actual data coming in about errors. Did that more than answer it?
I think what it does is it just illustrates the fact that how important processes are.
So important, definitely.
And for anybody that wants to start a business, let's put together processes, right?
Yes. And it gives a sense of safety to the staff. They know what to do. They're not like hearing it from this person or this person. Well, Sally said this and John said this, and well, none of those things are true. So how about we give everybody, we'll start them on the same page. And I'll tell you what else, a bit of advice I would give to anybody starting a company is whether somebody's coming in with 20 years of experience in what it is that you're doing or 0 years, put them through the same training, because chances are maybe at their other company, there wasn't a training program either. So bring them in, just put everybody a blank slate right at the beginning. They're gonna learn, they're gonna appreciate the fact that you took the time and that you didn't just assume that they knew this stuff, but that you took the time to get them through your training, which should be the training on your processes and where your processes emanated from. For us, we had to make sure our processes complied with international regulations and FDA regulations. I mean, so many things. So that we would have no issues when we go to the regulatory bodies all over the world to get these devices approved. So.
All right. So you mentioned at the beginning that you sold your company. So what does Sandy Maddock do now? You're still a young lady and still an entrepreneur at heart, and you still, you have vision, I'm sure. So talk to us a little bit about what you got going on and what you're doing.
Thank you for calling me young. I appreciate that. As I get my readers on, and no. So I'll tell you, I want to be honest with those of you out there that are thinking about starting a company and selling a company. Maybe those of you that have a company already and selling it. It was an adjustment, like severe adjustment, to go from this is a place I love with people I love, and I go there every day, and then literally on one day, my right arm was cut off, literally overnight. So it took me a little while. So I was doing a lot of I was in limbo. But it's really important to me. I need to continue to grow, like intellectually and spiritually, as in terms of my own personal growth. And I think that it's important that I continue to be engaged. So one of the things that we did really well at imarc is we taught people how to think. And I know that probably sounds strange, like you have to teach people how to think, but it actually is a thing. And we did it so well because here's the thing: when we're out at these hospitals, we're out there by ourselves, right? And we never, ever, ever had a checklist mentality. Like, okay, A equals A, B equals B, C equals C. Okay, check. We always trained our folks to think and to be able to problem solve, and not to assume that because we solved this problem here today, that if it's the same problem at another hospital, you're going to solve it the same way. Like we wanted them to think and say, oh, no, no, no. Even though this is the same problem I just dealt with, because we're in a different system, we actually have to look at solving this a different way. So we wanted them to be able to think. And it was one of the things that I identified early on as one of the problems with the folks that would come in when I was a research nurse that couldn't think. We're also seeing that a lot more with people coming out of college and not being able to think, being more of a checklist mentality, I guess. So with that, the last couple of years that I've been at imarc, we've been doing critical thinking training. And that has just been so well received. I think the first time that I was asked to do it, it was before I was even thinking about doing critical thinking training. I was asked by a client, like, how is it that your people can think so well, and then they said, can you come in and talk to our project managers? So some of these project managers are PhDs, master's degrees, really smart people. And I thought, how is this even going to be received? From day one, it's been received amazingly well. And so now I'm literally working on a project teaching physicians how to critically think in cases, surgical cases, when things go wrong. I mean, how is that? And you think, oh, and let me tell you, Bob, I don't know if we have time for this, but way back in the beginning of imarc, this is a great message for women out there and for nurses. I got hired to do a training for physicians. And it was about training on how to do clinical research, which was my expertise. I started a company in it, right? So this is my expertise. We get all the way through the planning phase. I developed the training materials. And then the woman who hired me said, oh, wait a second. She saw my title slide and that I was a nurse. Oh, we can't have you do this. You're a nurse. How are you going to train physicians? Literally fired me. Like literally said, not fired me, but literally said, no, we're not interested anymore. Literally got to the end, she was totally eating up the content. But because she found out I was a nurse, and I don't know how she missed that, she's like, they'll never take it from you. And then here I am 22 years later, training physicians how to critically think during surgery. I don't know how to do the surgery they're doing, but I know how to think. And so my goal is to help them think about next steps if A, B, or C happens, and to be able to make good decisions to avoid complications in patients. So that's what I'm spending my energy on now. And I'm trying to develop it into kind of an all ages training where maybe I can go into schools and start teaching kindergartners a little critical thinking, or high school seniors, or something like that. So still a work in progress, Bob, but and then I'm also doing some things personally that I've just wanted to do for a long time, leading the women's ministry at my church. I am starting a quilting for cancer patients kind of a charity, managing a foundation. I'm busy. So, and fulfilled. I'm pretty happy. So.
Yeah, well, sounds like a lot. My goodness, so we're back up against it here. We're almost at an hour. Believe it or not, this was absolutely phenomenal. Thank you for your time. I'm going to give you a chance for your parting thoughts. All right. So before I do that, though, I'm going to talk about my sponsors one more time. And then I'm going to give it over to you, and whatever you sage advice you want to lay upon us, we're ready, willing, and able to listen to. First of all, BCT Alarms over here, Brian Jankowski and his team, they do an awesome job at helping your security for your home, security for your businesses. And I know that they do some work with local schools. They're everywhere. They do a great work. They really appreciate their employees. And then WOBL AM 1320 and 107.7 FM Gold Country, WDLW AM 1380 and 98.9 FM Rock and Roll Oldies on the Cool Cat. And also a special shout out to the Morning Journal. If you were able to pick up the Tuesday's edition of the Morning Journal, you'd notice up in the masthead that this podcast is actually being mentioned on in that paper. So thanks a lot for the Morning Journal as well. So here we go, Sandy. Parting thoughts.
Parting thoughts. I don't know. I don't have any new parting thoughts, but I would encourage young people or those of you who are maybe ready to make a change or thinking about making a change. Maybe you don't think you're ready. Just do it. Make yourself uncomfortable and make sure it's not about you. Look for that higher purpose and find your passion and follow that. But yeah, I guess that's it, Bob. But thank you for having me. I appreciate it. I really enjoyed this last hour with you, and I'm just happy to see that you're out there doing this. It's great.
I appreciate that very much. You still have a LinkedIn page?
Oh yeah, it's probably not updated. I'm probably still CEO of imarc.
But if people want to reach out to you, they can do so
Yep.
on
LinkedIn.
LinkedIn.
Mm-hmm. Yep, for sure.
Very good. All right. So, Sandy, thank you so much for your time. It was enjoyable. I could go on for another hour. I think your story is so incredible. And I think there are so many people that if your motivation, your excitement is going to motivate so many people. I look forward to just the amount of people that you've blessed as a result of today's podcast. So thank you so much.
Thanks, Bob. Thank you so much. Thanks for inviting me.
You're welcome.